Last week I reported on Liberia that was right over by Guinea, which we were just talking about. Liberia has had a bishop that's refused to let them consider disaffiliation from the United Methodist Church and has decided to stand behind the American bishops in recommending regionalization, which is a plan to pretty much share the structure of the United Methodist Church across the world, but not to kind of separate out the denominations so it's regionally independent. They're not accountable to one another. They can't really interfere with one another. It was also that the Americans could change the sexual ethics of this region in North America, and it wouldn't necessarily reflect on the global church. They wanted everybody to be able to have their cake and eat it too. Of course, I've spoken very clearly against this, as have most conservatives, because if you read First Corinthians in particular, the notion of Christ's body just doesn't allow for that kind of separation from one another. But that, people who are already of the mind that they're on the right side of history, they don't listen to that. They haven't proven particularly persuadable to that point, because the end goal, they've already decided what the end goal is, and that is sexual licentiousness, although they disagree on where the line now lies, and we might get to that. Within Liberia, they've been having their annual conference, and it immediately split, and that was partly marked by a letter put out by their United Methodist Women, Conference United Methodist Women in Liberia Episcopal Area. I saw a number of things get published on this letter last week, but I couldn't find the actual letter, so I finally had it mailed directly to me. It's only a couple pages long. This was published on February 11th, a week ago today. We present our compliments and right to officially take a stand as women of the church. This is addressed to Bishop Quire, who has, again, been restricting and restraining the speech of his people in his annual conference. The women say, whereas the United Methodist Women is an autonomous organization, we have observed over the period of time the chaos and deception that have engulfed and degenerated our church, thereby turning it into public disrepute under your leadership. So they begin nice, and it immediately turns into, gee, we notice that you're not leading well. As women of the church, we are the custodians of the traditions and faith of our church. We cannot stand by and watch all that is going on without taking a stand based on biblical principles and foundations of our forefathers and mothers, given the publication of the 2020/2024 Book of Discipline. Please note the followings. 1. We reject the decision of the General Conference to change the definition of marriage, legalize homosexuality in the church, approve same-sex marriage, and vote to change the structure of the United Methodist Church from connectionalism to regionalization. Man, this is really direct. This is great. Point 2, we reject the decision of the resident bishop, Samuel Quire, to deny the people called United Methodist an opportunity to sit around the table at a special session and decide on an issue affecting their faith and salvation. So they're referring to, he refused to let them have a special called conference to deliberate the developments of the last general conference. Rather, he's insisted on having the regularly scheduled conference and kicking out people in leadership that he knew were not with him. So they are not in favor of that. They say, point 3, we reject the decision of the bishop to violate the 2016 Book of Discipline by implementing, and the later one, by implementing a legal suspension of clergy and lay people across the Liberia Annual Conference without any due process. Please note that the bishop has no power above what is given him in the Book of Discipline. Bishop is not a law unto himself. He did not elect himself. There are guardrails and checkpoints. He is not above the Book of Discipline. So I already alluded to that. I don't know if there's a final head count, but probably at least a dozen people in leadership have been summarily removed from their positions once they made clear that they were not in favor of regionalization. Point 4, we denounce the poor leadership demonstrated by Brother Tolbert and Yesua, conference lay leader, Teresa Davies, Associate Lay Leader of Region 1, Brother Allison Pagar, Associate Lay Leader for Region 3, in the way and manner they have conducted themselves on discussing the trending issues of their church, their advices to the bishop, and their unilateral decisions on behalf of lay people without reference and due respect to most of the lay organizations. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about that. Point 5, we denounce the dissolution of the legitimate Board of Ordained Ministry and its replacement by an illegitimate board tailored to play to the tune of the bishop. So yeah, that's tied to point 3. Point 6, we denounce the suspension of the legitimate corps of officers of the Conference of United Methodist Young Adult Fellowship after the failed conspiracy plan from the bishop's office did not work out as it was enacted through the Young People's Department, acted upon by the associate director to unseat the sitting president of the Conference Young Adult Fellowship. Point 7, we denounce your leadership for illegally suspending and prohibiting Brother Orlando Boyce and all the he was the district lay leader for St. Paul River District Conference, and all other United Methodists who spoke out against regionalization, homosexuality, and same-sex marriage. Are these doctrines of our church that people are claiming they violated? So several of these should really kind of be sub-points, but that's not really the point here. There are several people in positions of power that have been removed, and there's been, well, what was the word that they used? A conspiracy. The bishop conspired and has used his authority. You know, it's really amazing considering he's not the only bishop. There are full-time employees of the church that have all this time and energy to arrange the cards in the deck exactly right, and they still get caught. Point 8, we denounce your action to suspend any district superintendent because he or she does not support regionalization, homosexuality, or same-sex marriage. 9, we oppose the acceptance of all money from the worldwide United Methodist Church to promote homosexuality, same-sex marriage, and regionalization in Liberia. While it is true that the laws of Liberia do not accept homosexuality, the church is established upon biblical principles upon which all theologies, faith, doctrine, and teachings are drawn. It is against biblical teachings for the church to legalize homosexuality and same-sex marriage. So one of the things you'll see, they did take their vote after this GMC people split off in Liberia, representing more than 100 churches. Those left behind did take their vote and approve regionalization. And they did so while also saying that they're not in favor of homosexuality. And to them, that absolves them of any kind of moral problem. But what United Methodist women here, well, I guess they wouldn't be United Methodist anymore, but representing that institution, they're condemning that and saying that these things are all tied together. Homosexuality, same-sex marriage, regionalization, they're all part of the same thing, which of course they are. And they're acknowledging that the United Methodist Church, the American money, has been used to try and sway the culture. And while the laws still haven't changed yet, they don't want to be a part of cultural revisionism. They don't want to be a part of an unbiblical movement aimed at liberalizing views of human sexuality around the world. Point 10, we further denounce the presence of armed people at United Methodist gatherings, thus providing fear and intimidations from manipulations and foul play. Unfortunately, this has been par for the course at a lot of United Methodist gatherings across not just Africa, but in America. A lot of times you'll see security called because there's been a culture of unhappiness, let's say. And when the conference is calling armed guards to conduct business affairs, that sure is a problem. Point 11, we also denounce your efforts to undermine the conference, United Methodist Women's Ministry in Liberia, by attempting to take away the women's property and for spreading false rumors that Guinea was not safe, and therefore the 78th Conference Women's Assembly should not be held there. So the bishop seems to have determined that the women are going to be a problem. And 12, finally, we are not surprised today that you ordered and put on hold the registration of the conference women's delegation, thereby stopping them for attending the 192nd annual session of the conference. Subsequently, our delegation was denied registration for the laity session on the basis that we had no tag for the annual conference. These actions are calculated attempts to silence the critical voices of the women in the church. Please note that no women, no church. So one of the things that a lot of people don't understand at this point, we've been so ingrained in America to believe in intersectionality, which is undergirded by racialist, sexist ideology, the fundamental belief being that all of history has been dominated by white men. And so we stand at an inflection point in history where people who are not men and are not white are all supposed to be in league together to open up all the doors and invite everyone to the table and to break apart the patriarchy. And so what you keep finding outside of America, though, we were talking last week about how churches of color just aren't interested in the GMC because it got coded as like a white people group, and that's really unfortunate. But people don't have those loyalties outside of Western culture. They don't have intersectionality. They don't have this narrative of white men dominating history. Rather, they have the historical view, which is like people of all colors and sexes are bad and they need Jesus, and people of all colors and sexes can receive Jesus, that he has died for all of us. And that simplicity allows for the lie of intersectionality to be broken down, and you'll find black women united against acceptance of sexual liberalism, of antinomianism, of licentiousness. And that does not fit within a Western woman's mindset. And so you'll find a lot of Western women just don't know what to say to this. But it sure is inconvenient when people who are on the lower end of the intersectional scale, black, non-American women, are united against the white privileged women in America, saying, we will not accept what you're shoving down our throats. So, of course, they're not speaking to the white Western women here. They indirectly are, but it's the white Western women who have funded and pressured this black African man to behave in a corrupt and manipulative fashion to provide the manufactured result that he and the white people in the West wanted. The letter ends, we are in trial times and no amount of suspension, fears, and intimidations will stop us from speaking out and standing up for the truth. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the conference women, hereby suspend Bishop Quire from his position as ex officio of the Conference Women's Organization. Yikes. Furthermore, we hereby take a vote of no confidence in the leadership of these three people whose names I butchered for their lack of understanding of the trending issues in the church and their poor leadership ability to steer the affairs of the Board of Laity. Let it be further noted that any attempt to suspend anyone on the conference women leadership or to appoint any new districtus with the appropriate consultation, without the appropriate consultation from the women, will not be acceptable. This is a very sad day for the United Methodist Church in Liberia, but we pray that God will comfort his people, restore hope to the hopeless, counsel the desolates, and most importantly, not allow the gates of hell to prevail. The devil has brought this fight to our doorsteps, and we stand forever ready to meet the foe. Like Joshua, we encourage all faithful disciples of Jesus Christ to choose ye this day whom you will serve. But as for we and our organization, we will continue to serve the Lord. God bless these bold women. Let me call upon all true Christian women in the church that the environment set at the Barnga Mission Gym is not conducive for Christian gathering because it is marked with the presence of armed people, fear, intimidation, mockery, and deceptions. This week is a history-making week in Barnga. I know I probably don't say that name wrong. I am calling on the women and other well-meaning Christians of the church to choose whom you will serve. We have been denied access to represent the women. You, the women, have the right to decide. You do not have to involve yourself in chaos. Ignore the chaos, pick up your cross, and follow Christ. The United Methodist Church is no longer at the crossroads. Rather, it has crossed the road. We, the women of the church, must speak out and stand up. And to quote a lot of African brethren, we move. This is what just became clear is the people we were trying to walk with, they don't listen. They're going to keep walking. You just have to go with Jesus and bid them adieu. I just was really admiring these women for standing up and speaking the truth, speaking it boldly. Here in America, people will speak to bishops disrespectfully, but it's because Americans are disrespectful of everybody. In different African nations, the office of bishop carries a lot of respect for a group of women in particular. To speak so clearly against a man just shows how dysfunctional the situation got. And so I have a lot of respect for those women, and they were a part of helping people get the clarity to then leave and start their own Global Methodist Conference in Liberia. This is not the end of struggles there. This is probably just the beginning in a lot of ways. We need to continue to pray for peace in Liberia.